When the termination letter showed up on her desk, she felt relief, because she finally stopped thinking she was losing her mind. For 6 months she blamed the migraines on stress, and the signatures on decisions she never made on her own forgetfulness, until a former coworker told her one thing: "He has done this before, and you not the last." But to reach that point, she had to go through months that nearly broke her. The notification came through at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Lauren was already in bed, her phone face down on the nightstand, when the buzz pulled her awake. She learned to keep it on silent after 8, but the vibration still reached her through the pillow. She told herself not to look. She looked anyway. It was a message from the company portal. A reminder that her quarterly performance review had been rescheduled to the following morning at 7. She stared at the screen until the blue light made her eyes ache. 7 meant she'd need to skip her usual morning walk, the only part of the day that felt like hers. It also meant she would not have time to prepare, which was probably the point. Lauren worked for a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in municipal infrastructure projects. Her official title was project coordinator, which sounded more important than it was. In practice, she managed schedules, tracked budgets, and fielded emails from clients who could not reach her supervisor directly. Her supervisor was a man named Dennis Keller, who hired her 2 years ago and had been the only constant in her professional life since. He was the kind of manager who remembered birthdays and asked about her migraines, and once helped her negotiate a lease on the apartment she lived in now, which was owned by a subsidiary of the firm and offered to employees at a discount. She owed him, or at least that's what it felt like. The migraines had started about 8 months ago. At first, they were manageable, dull pressure behind her eyes that ibuprofen could handle. Then they got worse. Sharp, sudden, disabling. She missed 2 days of work in October, and Dennis had been understanding. Too understanding. He suggested she take a full week off, but she knew what that meant. A week off turned into falling behind, which turned into questions about whether she could handle the workload, which turned into someone else getting assigned to her projects. So she came back after 3 days, even though the light from her monitor still made her want to throw up. By November, the migraines were constant. She stopped calling them migraines because that implied they ended. This was just a low hum of pain that spiked without warning. She started keeping the blinds drawn in her apartment. She stopped going to the gym. She ate meals standing up in her kitchen because sitting at the table felt like admitting she was too tired to function. Dennis noticed. He always noticed. He leaned into her cubicle with his arms crossed and his head tilted in a way that looked concerned but felt like surveillance. "You do not look good," he say. "Maybe you should see someone." She did see someone. A doctor at the clinic covered by her insurance, which was also provided by the firm. The doctor ran tests, blood work, a CT scan, an allergy panel. Everything came back normal. "Stress," the doctor said, as if that explained anything. "You need to manage your stress." Lauren nodded and left with a prescription for something that made her drowsy but did not touch the pain. She did not fill it a second time. The performance review the next morning was brief. Dennis sat across from her in one of the small conference rooms with the door closed. He had a folder in front of him, but he did not open it. "I'm worried about you," he said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "You've been struggling, and I get it. This job is demanding, but I need to know you recommitted." Lauren felt her stomach tighten. "I am committed." "I know you think you are," Dennis said, "but commitment is not just about showing up. That's about being present. And lately you have not been." He paused, letting the words settle. "I've been covering for you, reassigning tasks, smoothing things over with clients when you too sick to respond. I do not mind doing that, but it's not be permanent." "I'm working on it," Lauren said. Her voice sounded small, even to herself. "I'm seeing a doctor." "That's good," Dennis said. "But here's the thing. The firm is restructuring. We reconsolidating roles, cutting redundancies. I'm doing everything I can to keep your position intact, but I need you to meet me halfway." He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a contract amendment, single page, dense with legal language. This shifts you to part-time hours with adjusted pay, but you keep your benefits and your housing subsidy. It takes some of the pressure off while you figure out your health situation. Lauren scanned the document. The salary reduction was significant, almost 30%. But the alternative, implied but not stated, was losing everything. When do I need to decide? Today, Dennis said. HR needs it by end of business. She signed it in the conference room, her hand shaking just enough that the signature looked unfamiliar. Dennis smiled and told her she was making the right choice. Then he walked her back to her desk and told her to take the rest of the day off. She did not argue. That night, Lauren could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. Something about it felt wrong, but she could not pinpoint what. Dennis had been kind. He'd been accommodating. He'd protected her job when he could have let her go entirely. So why did she feel worse than before? The headache came back around 3 in the morning, sharp and relentless. She got up and stood by the window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. Across the street, the office building where she worked was lit up on the 3rd floor. She could see movement through the windows, someone working late or early. She wondered if it was Dennis. The part-time arrangement turned out to be anything but easier. Lauren's hours were technically reduced, but the workload stayed the same. Dennis explained it as a transitional period, a way to ease her back into full capacity without the pressure of a full-time schedule. What it meant in practice was that she worked the same days, attended the same meetings, and managed the same projects, but for less money and with the understanding that she should be grateful for the flexibility. The first week, she tried to set boundaries. She logged off at 3 instead of 6. She stopped checking emails after dinner. But the messages kept coming. Client requests that could not wait. Budget updates that needed her signature. Meeting notes that Dennis needed her to review before morning. Each one framed as urgent. Each one accompanied by a gentle reminder that he was trusting her to handle it despite her reduced hours. By the end of the 2nd week, she was back to working full days, just without the pay to match. The migraines did not improve. If anything, they got worse. She started waking up with them, a deep throb at the base of her skull that made it hard to lift her head off the pillow. Some mornings she'd sit on the edge of her bed for 20 minutes, waiting for the room to stop tilting. She bought blackout curtains. She stopped drinking coffee, then started again when the exhaustion became unbearable. She tried acupuncture, supplements, a meditation app that a coworker recommended. Nothing worked. In early December, Dennis called her into his office. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray winter light that made everything look washed out. He gestured for her to sit and closed the door behind her. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. His tone was serious, but not unkind. There's been some concern from upstairs about discrepancies in the Riverside project budget. Lauren felt her chest tighten. The Riverside project was one of hers. A municipal wastewater upgrade that had been dragging on for months. What kind of discrepancies? Nothing major, Dennis said. Just some line items that do not match up between the client invoices and our internal tracking. I'm sure it's a clerical error, but HR wants to do an audit. Standard procedure. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. I told them you've been dealing with health issues, that it's probably just a matter of oversight. But they going to need documentation. Emails, meeting notes, anything that shows your decision-making process on the budget allocations. Lauren tried to remember the last time she reviewed the Riverside budget in detail. It had been weeks, maybe longer. Dennis had taken over most of the client communication after she missed a meeting in November. I can pull everything together, she said. It might take a few days. That's fine, Dennis said. But I need you to be thorough. If there's anything that does not look right, anything that could be misinterpreted, I need to know about it now. I'm on your side here, but I can only protect you if you honest with me. She left his office with a knot in her stomach that did not loosen. That night, she went through her emails, searching for anything related to Riverside. There were gaps, threads she did not remember being part of, approvals she did not recall giving. She found one email from Dennis to a client, sent from her account, confirming a budget reallocation She never authorized. The timestamp was from a day she'd been out sick. She stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Maybe she'd given Dennis access to her email for coverage purposes. Maybe she'd forgotten. Her memory had been unreliable lately, whole afternoons dissolving into fog. She did not mention the email to Dennis. Instead, she compiled everything she could find and sent it to HR the next morning. Then she tried to put it out of her mind, though the unease lingered like a low-grade fever. It was around this time that she started noticing other things. Small inconsistencies that did not quite add up. A meeting she'd been told was cancelled but later learned had happened without her. A report she'd drafted that appeared in a presentation with significant changes, none of which she'd made. A coworker from another department who mentioned seeing her name on an internal audit list, though she had not been informed of any audit beyond Riverside. When she asked Dennis about it, he looked puzzled. "I think you might be misremembering," he said gently. "You've been under a lot of strain. Sometimes our brains fill in gaps in ways that are not accurate." She wanted to argue, but she could not be sure. The migraines made everything harder to trust. Her perception, her memory, her judgment. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was losing track of things. The thought terrified her more than the alternative. Just before Christmas, the firm announced a restructuring. It came in the form of an all-staff email, clinical and impersonal. Several positions were being eliminated to streamline operations. Affected employees would be notified individually within the next 2 weeks. Lauren read the email 3 times, her pulse hammering in her ears. Dennis stopped by her desk an hour later. "Do not worry," he said, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. "You resafe. I made sure of it." But 2 days later, he called her into his office again. This time, there was someone from HR with him, a woman Lauren had seen in the building but never spoken to. "We need to talk about your position," Dennis said. His voice was still kind, but there was an edge to it now, something rehearsed. "The restructuring means we eliminating the project coordinator role. But I do not want you to panic. I've worked out an alternative." The alternative was a move to an administrative support position in a different department. The pay was lower, nearly half of what she'd been making before the part-time reduction. The benefits stayed the same, including the housing subsidy, but there was a catch. The new role required a 6-month probationary period, during which her housing arrangement would be reevaluated based on performance. "It's the best I could do," Dennis said. "If you do not take it, you'll be part of the layoffs. And without the job, you lose the apartment." Lauren looked at the HR representative, who said nothing. Then she looked back at Dennis. "When do I need to decide?" "End of day," he said. She walked back to her desk in a daze. Around her, the office hummed with its usual activity. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people moving through their routines as if nothing had changed. She sat down and stared at her computer screen, the words blurring together. Her head throbbed. Her hands felt cold. She thought about the apartment, the lease she could not afford on her own, the security deposit she did not have saved. She thought about starting over somewhere else, sending out resumes, explaining the gap in her employment, the reasons she left. She thought about Dennis's face, the concern that always looked real but never quite felt it. She opened her email and typed out her acceptance. Then she sat there for a long time, not moving, feeling the weight of it settle over her like something she could not shake off. The new position started in January. Lauren's desk was moved to a different floor, a smaller space near the copy room where the fluorescent lights hummed constantly. Her job now consisted of scheduling meetings, formatting reports, and managing supply orders. It was the kind of work that required attention but not thought, the kind that made hours feel like days. Her new supervisor was a department head named Carol Wang, who was polite but distant. Carol did not ask about her health or her weekend plans. She gave instructions and expected them followed. It was, in a strange way, a relief. Dennis still checked in. He stopped by her new desk once or twice a week, always with the same concerned expression. "How are you holding up?" He asked. "I know this is not what you wanted, but it's temporary. Once you prove yourself here, we can talk about moving you back into a coordinator role. She nod and thank him, though she was starting to realize that temporary had a way of becoming permanent. The migraines were still there, but they changed. Instead of sharp spikes of pain, they settled into a constant dull pressure, like her skull was too small for her brain. She stopped mentioning them to anyone. There did not seem to be a point. She seen 3 doctors, tried 2 different medications, and spent money she did not have on a neurologist who told her the same thing the first doctor had. Stress. Manage your stress. As if that were something she could control. In late January, something happened that she almost missed. She was in the break room, refilling her water bottle, when a woman she did not recognize walked in. The woman looked to be in her early 40s, dressed in jeans and a sweater, carrying a messenger bag. She glanced at Lauren, then did a double take. "You work here?" the woman asked. "Yes," Lauren said, uncertain. "Can I help you with something?" The woman hesitated, then shook her head. "No, sorry. I thought I recognized you." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Are you in the infrastructure division?" "I was," Lauren said. "I'm in admin now." The woman's expression shifted, something like recognition crossing her face. "You worked under Dennis Keller." It was not a question. "Yes," Lauren said slowly. "Do you know him?" "I used to work here," the woman said. 3 years ago. I was a project manager in infrastructure." She glanced over her shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone was listening, then stepped closer. "I left after Dennis restructured my position." "Same thing you going through, I'm guessing." "Lot of concern about my performance, lot of talk about helping me succeed, and then suddenly I'm being offered a demotion or a severance package." Lauren felt something cold settle in her chest. "Why are you here?" "Dropping off paperwork for a friend," the woman said. "But I saw you and Look, I do not know what your situation is, and maybe I'm overstepping. But if you feeling like something's off, like things do not add up, trust that feeling." "I did not, and I wish I had." She pulled a business card from her bag and handed it to Lauren. "My name is Jenna Cortland. I'm a consultant now, but I still have contacts here. If you ever want to talk, call me." Lauren took the card, her hand trembling slightly. Jenna gave her a small, sad smile, then left. Lauren stood there for a long time, staring at the card. Then she slipped it into her pocket and went back to her desk. She did not call Jenna right away. She told herself it was paranoia, that Jenna's experience did not mean hers was the same. But the conversation stayed with her, a splinter she could not ignore. That night, she started going through her files again. Not just the Riverside project, but everything she worked on in the past 2 years. She made a list of inconsistencies. Emails sent from her account that she did not remember writing. Budget approvals she did not recall authorizing. Meeting notes that contradicted her memory of what had been discussed. It could all be explained by her migraines, by stress, by the gaps in her focus. Or it could be something else. On a Friday in early February, she called Jenna. They met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office, far enough that Lauren would not run into anyone from work. Jenna listened as Lauren described everything: the migraines, the performance reviews, the contract changes, the restructuring, the discrepancies in the files. When she finished, Jenna was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee. "How much access does Dennis have to your work accounts?" she asked finally. "Full access," Lauren said. "He needed it for coverage when I was out sick." "And he still has it?" Lauren did not know. She never checked. Jenna pulled out her phone and opened a notes app. "Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you, and you do not have to believe me, but you should at least consider it. Dennis has a pattern. He identifies people who are vulnerable, usually because of health issues or personal problems, and he positions himself as their advocate. He helps them genuinely at first, but over time he creates dependencies. He controls their access to resources, isolates them from other managers, makes them think they not succeed without him. And then he uses that control to shift blame when things go wrong. If a project fails or a budget gets mismanaged, it's their name on the paperwork. not his. Lauren felt her throat tighten. Why would he do that? Because it works, Jenna said. He has been doing it for years. I was not the first, and you're not going to be the last. The firm protects him because he delivers results. He makes himself indispensable. And the people he burns out? They leave quietly, usually with severance agreements that include non-disparagement clauses. No one talks about it. What happened to you? Lauren asked. Jenna's jaw tightened. I signed the severance. I did not have a choice. I had a kid in college and a mortgage I could not afford to lose. So I took the money and walked away. But I regret it. Because now he is still there, doing the same thing to someone else. Lauren stared at her coffee, her mind racing. What am I supposed to do with this? Document everything, Jenna said. Every email, every meeting, every conversation. Get copies of anything with your name on it, especially things you did not actually do. And start looking for another job quietly. Do not tell Dennis, do not tell HR, do not tell anyone at the firm. Just get out. That night, Lauren sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open. She started pulling files, saving copies to a personal drive. She went through her email settings and realized Dennis still had delegate access to her account. She removed it, her hands shaking as she clicked the confirmation button. Then she opened a job search site and stared at the listings, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on her. She did not want to believe Jenna. She did not want to accept that the past 2 years had been a lie, that someone she trusted had been systematically destroying her career and her health. But the evidence was there, and she could not unsee it. The migraine came back that night, worse than it had been in weeks. She lay in bed with the lights off, her head pounding, and for the first time in months, she let herself cry. Not because of the pain, but because of the anger. Because she let this happen. Because she signed every contract, accepted every demotion, believed every reassurance. And now she did not know how to undo it. Lauren spent the next 2 weeks moving carefully. She continued showing up to work, completing her tasks, keeping her head down. She did not confront Dennis. She did not reach out to HR. She just documented every email, every file, every interaction. She took screenshots of her account access logs, showing when Dennis had used her credentials. She saved budget documents that bore her signature but contained decisions she never made. She compiled meeting notes where her name appeared as the point of contact for projects she'd been systematically excluded from. The folder grew larger each day, a catalog of small thefts that added up to something she could no longer ignore. At the same time, she started applying for jobs. Not in infrastructure, not in consulting. She cast a wider net, administrative roles, operations positions, anything that would give her enough income to cover rent outside the firm's housing program. Most applications went unanswered. A few led to interviews that went nowhere. She tried not to let the rejections discourage her, but each one felt like confirmation that she stayed too long, that the gap in her real responsibilities would be impossible to explain. In mid-February, Dennis called her into his office. She'd been expecting it. She'd removed his access to her email, and he would have noticed. She walked in and sat down, her hands folded in her lap, her expression neutral. "We need to talk," Dennis said. His tone was different now, less warm, more transactional. "There's been a complaint from Carol about your performance. She says you've been distracted, that you're not meeting deadlines." Lauren felt a flicker of anger but kept her voice steady. "That's not true. I've completed everything she asked for." "Maybe from your perspective," Dennis said, "but Carol has concerns. And given your history, I think we need to take this seriously." He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. "I'm trying to help you here, but you're not making it easy. First you remove my access to your email without discussing it with me, which raises questions about your willingness to collaborate. Now there are performance issues in a role that was supposed to be a fresh start. I'm starting to wonder if you recommitted to being here." Lauren looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she saw past the concern to what was underneath. Control. She took a breath. "I'd like to request a copy of Carol's complaint." and I'd like to involve HR in this conversation. Dennis's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. That's not necessary. This is an informal discussion. Then I'd like it to be formal, Lauren said. If there are concerns about my performance, I want them documented properly. And I want to make sure we following company procedures. For a moment, Dennis said nothing. Then he smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Of course, I'll set up a meeting with HR for next week. The meeting never happened. Instead, 3 days later, Lauren received an email from HR informing her that her position was being eliminated as part of a continued restructuring effort. She was being offered a severance package, 2 months' pay and extended benefits through the end of March. The housing subsidy would terminate at the end of February. She had until the following Monday to accept or decline. She read the email twice, then called Jenna. They pushing me out, she said. Good, Jenna said. Take the severance. Do not negotiate, do not argue. Just take it and leave. I have documentation, Lauren said. Proof that Dennis was accessing my accounts, approving things in my name, manipulating my work. I could file a complaint. Jenna was quiet for a moment. You could. But what do you think happens then? They investigate, maybe. Dennis denies everything, says you gave him access, says you disgruntled. They drag it out for months while you unemployed and fighting them. And even if you win, what do you get? Your job back? A settlement that comes with an NDA? It would not change what happened, and it would not stop him from doing it to someone else. Lauren closed her eyes. So I just walk away. You walk away, Jenna said, and you rebuild. It's not fair, but it's the only way you get your life back. Lauren accepted the severance that afternoon. She signed the documents electronically, her hand steady this time. Then she started packing. The apartment hunt was harder than she expected. Everything in her price range was either too far from public transit or required a deposit she did not have. She ended up in a studio across town, smaller than the Firmus apartment, with thin walls and a radiator that clanged at odd hours. It was not much, but it was hers. No subsidy, no strings, no one watching to see if she deserved it. Her last day at the firm was a Friday in late February. She cleaned out her desk quietly, boxing up the few personal items she brought with her. No one threw her a going-away party. Carol stopped by to wish her well, her tone polite but distant. Dennis did not come by at all. She saw him once, in the hallway as she was leaving. He nodded at her and she nodded back. Neither of them spoke. She walked out into the cold afternoon air, carrying a single box, and felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, not happiness, just space. Room to breathe without waiting for the next crisis, the next emotion, the next carefully worded email that made her question her own reality. The migraines did not disappear overnight, but within a week of leaving, she noticed they were less frequent. Within 2 weeks, she could make it through a full day without the crushing pressure behind her eyes. She started sleeping better. She started eating meals at a table instead of standing in her kitchen. Small things, but they felt enormous. In March, she got a call back from one of her applications, a small nonprofit that managed affordable housing projects. The pay was not great, but it was enough. The work was straightforward. No hidden agendas, no performance reviews designed to justify cuts. Her supervisor was a woman in her 50s who communicated clearly and did not ask Lauren to work unpaid overtime. Felt almost surreal. Jenna checked in every few weeks. They met for coffee once in April, and Lauren told her about the new job, the new apartment, the slow process of rebuilding. How do you feel? Jenna asked. Lauren thought about it. Tired, she said. Angry sometimes, but also lighter. Like I'm not carrying something I did not know was there. That's good, Jenna said. That's progress. Lauren nodded. She did not tell Jenna about the moments when she still doubted herself, when she wondered if she misread everything, if Dennis had really been trying to help and she just been too sick to see it. Those thoughts came less often now, but they still came. She was learning to sit with them, to recognize them for what they were, echoes of something that was over. One evening in late April, she was walking home from the grocery store when she passed the building where the firm's offices were. The lights were on in the third-floor windows. She stopped for a moment, looking up, and felt nothing. No pull, no regret, no lingering attachment. Just a building where she used to work. She adjusted the grocery bag on her hip and kept walking. It was not a happy ending, not in the way stories were supposed to end. She lost 2 years, a career trajectory, savings she never get back. She signed away her right to speak publicly about what had happened. Dennis was still there, still in his office, still doing what he always done. The firm had not changed. The system had not changed. But she had. She gotten out and she was still standing. Some days that felt like enough.